From a network of highly secure, top secret locations across South Texas, this is the Spurs Insider, the podcast that refuses to tank for draft picks. I am your host, Mike Finger, as always, joined by Express News beat writer Tom Ringo Orsborn and the polarizing Jeff McDonald. Nick Talbot is off this week. But what we are going to talk about this week is a team that is hanging on. It was in trouble for a while. It was rough for a while. It's probably going to get rough again. But at the moment, the Spurs are hanging on. How are they doing it, Tom and Jeff?
They're back, baby. They're back. The Spurs are back.
For how long?
When's the next game? Tomorrow?
We're recording this on Tuesday morning.
Yeah, we'll take the temperature again tomorrow. I mean, you know, they've won 2 games in a row, and that's better than losing, I guess. But, you know, they snapped that 5-game losing streak, which I don't know. There's a little bit of hard luck in there. They had a couple overtime losses in there. Had the game at Denver where they came roaring back and had a chance to tie at the end. Had 3 chances to tie at the end. Couldn't do it. Finally broke through at Dallas with the last second heroics of one DeMar DeRozan, and then took care of business against a very G League-ish Orlando Magic team. So, you know, it's we've talked all year about this team as sort of up and down. Tends to regress to whatever mean it needs to regress to. And that's where we are now. But they're hanging on, still in that play-in hunt, which would, I guess, technically keep them in the playoff hunt. So that's all you can ask for, unless you're one of those people that want them just to tank for draft picks. But I don't think any of us are those people.
Tom, is your optimism flowing again?
Well, they definitely got a boost from Lonnie Walker's return. He definitely impacted the Dallas game in a very positive manner, and Orlando last night as well. You know, he's rested. He's the only guy who has relatively fresh legs, and plus what he does on the court really gives him a boost energy wise, and it helps that sagging bench that was really struggling during the losing streak when he was part of the 9 games he was absent with a sore wrist. So, yeah, I'm optimistic. I mean, health is everything, and you know, the schedule though isn't, you know, as it's already been said, it's going to get rough again. But they are hanging in there, and it helps to have Lonnie back. And yeah, I think when Gorgie gets back, that's going to help as well. If they can finally get him, you know, mixed into the rotation and have him get more than the 25 minutes he's received since he signed with the club due to that shoulder injury.
It was mentioned on this podcast last week, kind of recklessly, maybe insanely, that as poorly as the Spurs were playing, as rough as things looked, and as little sense as it made when you look at the regular rest of the regular season schedule, to think that a hot streak could be coming. It was posited here that there could be a time when they win 4 out of 5 games at some point. As little sense as that makes, I think they could easily turn around and just lose 5 more in a row. But after winning 2 in a row now, I mean, it's not outlandish to think you win 2 of the next 3, you got your 4 out of 5. As harebrained, as crazy as that seemed a week ago, like, it can happen. Things can turn around in a hurry. And the rest of the schedule is just absolutely brutal. And it still seems like a chance that things could fall apart and they could fall out of the top 10. But, I mean, things can turn quickly. And you look at the rest of this week, they're at Toronto, in Tampa, which makes as much sense as anything these days. On Wednesday night, Toronto's kind of slumping, and they get a home game against Portland on Friday, and then a back-to-back at Phoenix. I mean, that thing, all that could go south. But there's stuff out there. There's there are opportunities, and I guess that's all they can ask for these days.
Yeah, I think 2 of 3 out of that stretch you mentioned is pretty overly optimistic. But I'm the pessimistic one, just in general in life. So
you win tomorrow, you beat Toronto and Tampa, and then split the back-to-back.
yeah,
Come on, that's not outrageous.
Sure, it's not outrageous, but I wouldn't bet my house on it. I might bet yours.
Okay, well, that's fair. That's fair. Things really did. We taped this after the Cleveland game last week, trying to remember how all this went. That was a low moment, and then those back-to-backs in Denver, which I think the polarizing Jeff McDonald had pointed out, that was 2 games in Denver probably were not going to be the antidote for a struggling team. He was right about that. But they played well in both those games and just kept getting beaten down by the end. And I would say that more than anything, that shot that DeMar DeRozan hit at the end of the Dallas game might be the most important one he's hit as a Spur, which sounds ridiculous, but it's because of the context and because over and over and over again over the past several weeks, they had been in games and just had them fall apart at the end. And that was another one where they led for most of the game, most of the fourth quarter, kind of let it slip away at the end. If he misses that shot and they lose that game, I'm not sure they recover.
Yeah.
And they might not recover anyway, but that would have just been too big of a blow to overcome, I think.
I was thinking of what you had said previously, Mike, about the one good thing. They just need that one good thing to happen, and that was definitely the one good thing. And it was great to see for DeMar too. For what he's been through, his reaction to sinking that shot was priceless. It was good to see that for him. But yeah, that was the one good thing that they were waiting to happen.
And when I say it's the biggest, that's not meant as like a backhanded compliment to him in terms of how he hasn't hit big shots. He's hit big shots for them before. He's hit game winners before. I just think that because of, again, the context of what this team has gone through this year, that might be the biggest, because if he doesn't make it, I think they're in trouble. And I mean, you add other layers to this. He misses that, they go to overtime again. I can't imagine them winning in overtime. It's pretty similar to the one that he almost made. What was the overtime game at home where he had a shot to win it and it went in and out? Was that Indiana?
Atlanta.
Atlanta. I mean, that team did not need a loss. It didn't need another overtime. It seems like everything has gone wrong in recent weeks, including losing games while playing an extra 5 minutes. Like that's not what they needed. And then they turn around and just totally take care of, like Jeff said, a G League level Orlando team yesterday. Maybe they don't do that if they're coming off another brutal loss. You don't know. And I'm not saying that DeMar shot is going to save the season, but losing that game would have been, I'm repeating myself, but I'm not sure they overcome that. So they're still in it.
Can we talk about how DeMar is clutch? Because there's sort of this idea out there that he's somehow not, and I guess it's just because when you're a player who takes a lot of last second shots, you're going to miss a lot too. I think there's a certain type of fan that just remembers the ones he missed. But since he joined the Spurs, the NBA has this clutch points, clutch scoring statistic. Since he's joined the Spurs, DeMar DeRozan is in the top 5 of the NBA in clutch points. So, I know there were, when you said this was the biggest, last second shot.
Most important might be the terminology, but go ahead.
Important. But there were some people, well, that's the only one he's made, and that's just simply not true. He's been remarkably clutch for this team. There's a certain type of fan that only remembers the ones that go out. And I remember this goes back to like the Robert Horry days when Robert Horry was so clutch, big shot Rob, and his his thing was, well, you take them because you know you're going to make some and you miss some and you just don't care. And that's sort of DeMar's approach to those shots. You take them and you just take them, and you don't care if they go in or out. And if this one misses, you take the next one. And I think that's kind of Pop called it courage, and I guess there's sort of a courage to that being that guy. It would have been interesting to see what would have happened if Dallas.
No fear of failure.
That's the phrase I'm fumbling for, Ringo.
Yeah, no fear of failure. He just doesn't. Yeah, just going to do it. It was interesting. Derek White's reaction. I thought at first he's turned slowly and looked at DeMar, and I thought it was a look of, my knee-jerk reaction was it was a look of admiration. But do you think he was thinking he was going to get the ball in that situation? He was at the top of the key.
Anybody thought that anybody but DeMar was going to get the ball.
Yeah. He was open, and I agree. But I'm just wondering. It was just a curious moment. The look on his face. Like I said,
Derek has full reactions. I'll say that.
Yeah.
At any point in the game, you watch Derek's facial expressions, and it might not be obvious what he means, but it's usually like entertaining. He's very expressive.
Let's start a controversy.
No,
Derek was pissed at DeMar for not passing the ball. Let's do it. Let's do it. Come on.
No, I'm sorry.
Everyone
I'm
aggregate
sorry,
this.
Jeff. Yeah. That wasn't my
No, this will be fun. Let's do it.
I was just curious. Yeah.
One thing I will say about obviously sports courage is different than life courage, and don't want to overstate how much bravery it takes to hit a game-winning shot. But
I think DeMar has life courage too. But go ahead.
He absolutely does. But I will say that the reaction to DeMar missing shots and the sort of undeserved reputation that he has among some people as a guy who misses a lot of late shots, that sort of reinforces the idea that it takes some guts to take them. Because he knows that if he misses it, people are going to give him crap for it.
Exactly.
And he's gotten crap for it over and over and over again. He gets more crap for the ones he misses than he gets credit for the ones he takes. And I think that kind of illustrates Pop's point about the sports courage it takes to attempt those. Because after you've missed some of them, and you've gotten criticism for it, like it would be really easy to say, let someone else try this one. Like, why put myself through it when the risk of people getting on me is going to be higher than the reward of people giving me a little bit of props. So yes, I think he deserves a lot of credit for continually trying.
It's everyday courage. The running into the burning building moments aren't going to happen very often, but for him to put himself out there like that continuously, it is courageous.
Could you have imagined Derek's reaction if DeMar had missed?
I'm sorry I brought that up.
I need to underscore for everyone that I'm just goofing right now. I'm just kidding. There's no beef between Derek White and DeMar DeRozan that I'm aware of. I think we're all just goofing right now. It's kind of early in the morning for me after a game, so I'm being goofy. All right, proceed.
And then there was the whole, why wasn't he doubled conversation, of course, but that's for our brethren up north in North Texas. It was
funny to watch that from afar because of how often, especially in recent weeks, but over the years, the Spurs fans, Spurs media, Spurs everybody have just kind of freaked out about the same situations when the Spurs lose, and how could they be so stupid as to strategy X or Y or Z, and to watch DeMar hit that shot and the Mavericks just kind of freak out about what were they thinking? It was amusing to watch it in another spot, and just it had been a while since the Spurs had pulled something like that off, where the other team was kind of kicking itself and second guessing itself, and people were really rake Carlisle over the coals for not sending another defender to him, and maybe
even
justifiably.
Yeah, he even made a second appearance on the Zoomcast that night, I believe, to clarify things.
Yeah.
To say my bad. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not just Greg Popovich who is the worst coach in the NBA. Some days does Rick Carlisle have like the second or third most active wins in the league right
Probably.
now? He also can be.
Wouldn't surprise me.
The idiot that everybody jumps on. Wouldn't surprise me.
Spoelstra's up there, I think.
Spoelstra, yeah.
Those three.
Luka, speaking of the Mavs, Luka Doncic had some things to say recently. He opined about the play-in itself and how he said he doesn't think it makes any sense for a team to make the playoffs, to finish in the 7th or 8th seed after 72 games, and then lose 2 games in the play-in and not make the playoffs. And sure, okay, that's a point, and it's not incorrect. But like, it's whoever makes the 7th or 8th seed isn't going to be winning the championship anyway. And usually the first round series are not that interesting. So why not more interesting things in the NBA? I think that's my opinion on the play. Is it's something to cover. It's something fun for the fans. Like, one single elimination games are usually fun. And so why not? Like, it's not like they're robbing the 7th seed of some huge accomplishment, having made the 7th seed. Like, that's my take on this. Is it's fine, and I think I like it. The play-in. How about Joe?
It makes the end of the season more interesting, also for more teams. I think if there's no play-in, the Spurs finish probably isn't as interesting because right now they'd be in 9th, and I don't know if they, so I agree with you. It makes things a little more interesting for a lot more teams, and I guess that's not a bad thing.
And it's not. Go ahead, Tom.
I like what Pop said the other night. At age 72, I've got to pick and choose what I'm going to think about, and that's not one of them that he's choosing to think about. So, yeah, it's a good thing. It's a good thing, but it's not something to pour over and worry about.
Every level of the playoffs adds more unfairness, really, to the team that accomplished the most over the course of a season. Like, if in any sport, in the NFL, you play 16 games. I guess they're playing 17 now. Well, that team doesn't automatically go to the Super Bowl. You have to play one game that you might lose to the 6th team. I think that's just kind of the deal we make in sports about playoffs, is there's going to be some randomness added to it. And it might not be totally fair that the 7th seed misses out on the playoffs after 72 games because they lose twice, and the 10th seed, which played much worse over the previous several months, gets in. But I mean, that happens everywhere, and I think I'm fine with it.
Yeah, if you look at college basketball, if you're the by God Texas Longhorns and you have such a great season, you beat Kansas twice. Like, it's not fair to go to the NCAA tournament and you lose one game to the 14th seed and your season's over.
Yeah,
that's not fair. I agree with Luka.
Yeah. They lost one game to a team, Abilene Christian, who's has a coach whose son was wearing a Bass Pro Shops hat in the stands. I just thought that was one of the funniest things about the NCAA tournament. Anyway, the play-in is here to stay. I think not just this season, but I think it's going to stick around. People are going to like it. The Spurs are still in the 9th spot, which means if the season ended today, which it often does end in early to mid-April. We're getting an extra month this year because of the delayed start. But if the season ended today, the Spurs would be playing the Golden State Warriors in a single game play-in, the 9-10 game. And then the winner of that game would play the loser of the Dallas-Memphis 7-8 game for the final spot. I'm not sure. I'd love the local Cagers' chances in that scenario to have to beat the Warriors and then either the Mavericks or Grizzlies in back-to-back games, but it'd be fun. And I mean, to go back to what Tom said at the beginning, you get a big Lonnie Walker game, you get some of these guys playing well. Who knows? And maybe we should go back to the Lonnie Walker thing, because I think that he's looked better in his return than I think he's looked in over any stretch that I can remember. He really adds something.
I think I scoffed a little last week when we talked about him being the guy riding in on the white horse to save the day. I mean, I thought he's a nice player. He helps you out, but I didn't know he'd make that kind of. I was wrong. He's made a huge impact on the bench. The bench was really struggling. And I think part of the reason is the guys who you normally count on to lead your bench, Patty Mills and Rudy Gay, are your oldest players, and they're just gassed. And they needed somebody off the bench to give them some kind of spark. And here comes a 22-year-old guy that has been out for 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks. Totally had changed the bench, especially the 2 wins against Dallas and Orlando. Even in Orlando, the Spurs were kind of muddling along for the first half of the first quarter, and as soon as Lonnie Walker's in the game, it's like he lit a match on a fuse there, just lit the fuse on that game, and he made a jumper, made two 3-pointers, and then the Spurs are off and running. They go on like a 39-7 run. They're off and running, and he was the guy that really sparked them, and I guess. He's the guy that can be your new kind of bench booster guy that they always need and always want. He's got the legs, and he's playing aggressively. He's one of those guys. He's one of the guys that can get to the rim on his own. Doesn't necessarily need, other people to set him up. So his return has been pretty big for these guys, and maybe will continue to be so.
Yeah, he was hurting most of the year with that wrist injury. It wasn't something that came on early. It's pretty much been the whole season. And, I think they wanted to sit him out earlier, but it just wasn't – they weren't able to do it because of all the circumstances. Derek's injury, the foot injury, and then the COVID outbreak. So he soldiered on and, finally got that rest that he needed. And it was a good thing because they're going to need him down the stretch here, and it's interesting that DeMar on the back-to-backs, like the Orlando game last night. You would have think Pop maybe would have rested somebody, but he didn't, and but boy, these guys, as you said, Jeff, they're gassed. I mean, they really are. Patty and Rudy and I'm sure DeMar, could really use some time off.
I wonder how they're going to feel after that bus ride to Tampa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's not much longer than some bus rides to airports and places.
I know.
Tampa isn't much farther from Orlando than like the Denver airport is from the Center, or the ball center as it is.
I was texting someone last night. Yeah, it's like Auburn Hills to the Detroit airport.
Right.
It's that bus ride.
Right.
It's just a funny image to me to picture these guys kind of loading up a bus. I just got in my head pretend it's a yellow dog, like in high school, taking the yellow dog bus from Orlando to Tampa, play the big district contest.
They are in buses all the time from airports to hotels.
Did you guys ride a yellow bus in high school, or did you take like I don't know where you're from? Did you take like a covered wagon? Did you ride horses?
There was a yellow bus. There was a yellow bus.
Freshman year, a yellow bus on Tanglewood. Pick it up on Tanglewood. Go to Jackson Keller. Yep.
Oh, there you go. But when you're doing in D'Hanis, when you're doing like a district ball game, you ride the yellow bus.
Uh-huh.
And I assume the mayor drove it, or who drove the bus?
The coach.
Coach, who was also the mayor,
coach.
I imagine.
Yes. Or the basketball coach, or the baseball coach, or whoever. Yeah.
You know what? As I was making that bad joke, I remembered going to. You remember this guy they had, James Anderson, in 2010? At the time, he was the highest. Yeah. He was the highest drafted rookie since Tim Duncan in 2010. All right, he was from a place called. Now I'm losing it, but it's this little place in Louisiana.
Right
on the state line between. It was in Arkansas. It was on the state line between Arkansas and Louisiana. The main drag was called State Line Road because on one side, like if you were at the Dairy Queen on one side, you were in Louisiana. If you were in the Dollar General on the other side, you were in Arkansas. But yeah, I went around just interviewed. It was an interesting story because it was such a small town. Like his gym was a literal like barn. But anyway, what reminded me of this is the basketball coaches take me around to all the people that I should interview about James Anderson and watched him play. He said, you should go interview the so and so. He used to run the clock at all the basketball games. So they drive me to this old fellow's house, and I go to this old fellow's house and interview him. And halfway through, I find out that not only is he the guy that used to run the clock at the basketball games, he was also the mayor of the town. And I just thought that was so funny.
For more insight like this, I invite everyone to come to expressnews.com for riveting stories from Jeff McDonald about mayors and small town clock operators.
For the record, Junction City.
That's what it was.
Arkansas in Union County. Yeah. So, Mike, was Jeff's story as riveting as my book review last week?
I'm telling you, like, we're going to the top of the charts. We're going to the top of the charts with stories about clock operators, mayors, Alamo revisionist history, where we found out.
But it was the same guy. That's why it's funny. It wasn't clock operators and mayors. It was clock operators / mayors.
You're talking to somebody.
That's hilarious.
You're talking to somebody who grew up in towns where that wasn't that unusual. But sure, yeah, that's great.
That's what reminded me of it. That's why I made the joke about the mayor driving your bus to play Hondo or whatnot.
Okay.
2010, according to Wikipedia, the population was 581.
Yeah, and like half those people were out of town the day that I went because it was less than that. Anyway, why don't we play Does Jeff Know, and then sell some digital magazines?
Well, I just want to say that we do need to point out that expressnews.com has lots of interesting stuff on it, stuff even more interesting than that story. You can subscribe, great deals. Subscribe to the Spurs Nation newsletter, where you get Jeff's stories in your inbox, in your tablet, on your cell phones every day. A lot of just really, really riveting stories from him and Tom Worsborn and the entire staff at the Express News. Does Jeff know? I'm not sure if we have an entry this week. Tom, do you have one?
Well, let's stick with Arkansas.
Okay.
The state, according to United States Geography for Kids, the state ranks number 1 in the U.S. in what agricultural production? It's 2 things, actually. One, I think he'll get.
Number 1 in I'm going to say cotton.
And when I say it's also
that's outrageous. That's really
good guess. Good guess.
There's no way Arkansas is number 1 in cotton. That's a terrible guess.
Texas, I would think, but yeah.
Okay, I don't know. Hemp.
What's the answer, Tom? He's never going to get it.
Poultry.
Poultry and chicken.
Yeah.
Oh, you said agricultural.
Yeah, I know. Crops. I should have. Yeah, it says rice too, but I find that hard to believe as well. But
yeah. Well, Jeff does not know. And the answer this week is Jeff does not know.
I don't. I should have known though, because the traditional Arkansas, the traditional Arkansas culinary dish is chicken and rice. Everyone knows that.
Well, all the Google searches produce. I love chicken and rice. All this Texas Google searches produce Texas as the leading cotton producing state.
I think that's probably by volume, just because Texas is a large state, as we all know.
Yeah.
We're winding down, and we like to finish on a high note. And one thing I was going to get to earlier before the story about James Anderson, we were talking about Lonnie Walker and what he has added to this team. And this might sound a little trite and cliche and pie in the sky. But one thing that had been missing from your Spurs during this losing streak is that fun factor, that joy that we had seen from them when they were playing so well earlier in the year. And in these last couple of games, when Lonnie was kind of on a roll, I might be overstating this, but you kind of saw it coming. That led to joy from Derek White and Keldon Johnson, who looked like he was kind of hitting the wall midway through the season. He had a huge defense to offense play against Orlando that kind of sparked this. And you see them jumping up and down and kind of being excited. And I just wonder, like maybe that's nonsense, but that team needed a little bit of joy. And to find that with Lonnie Walker coming back, maybe that pays off. And maybe that won't mean a whole lot when they play 5 games in 7 nights again and they hit the rough schedule. But I think if we're going to finish this podcast on a high note, which we often do, it's don't underestimate moments of joy and the impact that it can make when you're feeling down, when you've lost 5 games in a row. Lonnie Walker can come in, turn your whole outlook upside down. And I don't want to dominate this at the end. Tom, if you have anything to add, Jeff's just going to throw a cloud on this.
As you know, as you're saying that, I'm thinking of the dunk over Nicolo Melli. And the reaction on the bench, they all erupt and jump out of their seats. And Keldon puts his hands around young Trey Jones.
Yes.
And I say young, they're only a year apart. But he's putting his hand around Trey's eyes, as if
that was hilarious.
You can't watch the carnage, youngster. It's too much for you, young man.
Yes.
And it was hilarious. So
we're not going to let Jeff speak for the rest of this podcast because he would ruin the vibe. And I'm just going to say that think about that dunk.
I'm actually surprised you just didn't. You can just mute me. I'm surprised you just didn't
mute me. Our producer Luis has that power. We do not. But we want more positive reviews. We're getting the reviews on our podcast every week. We want to finish on a high note. So look for the joy in your life. Look for that Lonnie Walker dunk and that Keldon Johnson celebration. Build on that. Let that turn everything around. In the meantime, take care of each other and keep it real.